Hello again, it's Michael Fudge, and in this end-to-end example, I'll demonstrate how to use lists in Python to effectively process and search through large amounts of data. For the setup for this program, we're going to write a password checker. Our password checker will first load in a list of common passwords, then allow you to check the password you entered against the list of common passwords. It will then tell you whether or not your password is good or bad based on whether or not the password is on the common password list. In the previous example, we searched through the file once and then just outputted some data. Because this one has a loop, we want to read from the file one time and store all the bad passwords into the computer's memory, and we'll do that using a Python list. Like all of our end-to-end examples, we're going to try to solve this problem organically. I'm going to write it as I figure it out. I'm going to probably make mistakes, learn from them, revise my code, and continue programming just like I would in real life. I'm going to do very little editing, and that's by design. For this example, I'm going to use Jupyter Notebook. You're welcome to code along with me. The source code is available on GitHub. If you're a student taking my course, you'll have this code on your computer already as you've cloned it as part of your Git repository. Let's begin. So as usual, I'm going to start by showing you the file. So here's the file. This is a list of common passwords. And right now you're looking at just 31 of them, but there's hundreds of common passwords in this file. I got this file off the internet. And what we want to do is load these passwords into Python, into a list. And then when you enter in a password, like if you say, I'm going to try baseball as my password, it will say, well, baseball's on the bad password list. So we're going to recommend that you don't use that password. You should use a different password. And that's going to be the main program logic that we build today. As usual, let's start to think it through. So one of the first things I need to do is I need to load the password file into a list. Now, I'm not sure specifically how I need to do that, but I know I need to do that. I also recognize that I'm going to need a loop here, but I'm going to implement my logic without the loop, then I'll add the loop later. This is pretty common because if you try to attack too much of the problem at once, it can be frustrating. So one of the things I like to do is simplify the problem by either constraining the inputs, constraining the outputs, or constraining its functionality, then build a program that solves that problem, then kind of scale up or ramp up my problem to make the complexity a little greater. So one way I can do this is if I don't know how to load the password file into a list, I could just make a list of passwords like this. I could say, password list, and then put my passwords in here in the list. I could do that too. So we'll see how hard things get and what I want to do from there. So let's assume I have my password file already set up so that there's a list of these passwords that I don't want people to use. I'm going to ask for input. Input your candidate password. If your candidate password is in the password list, we're going to print out bad password, right? Or I probably should print don't use this password. Otherwise, we should probably print this is, I don't want to say it's an acceptable password because it could still be a pretty weak password. And this is kind of the realistic part of me thinking this through. So let's just say print this is, let's just say print this password is not on the list. I don't want to say it's a good password because, you could probably just take one of these passwords and put an extra character at the end of it and it won't be found on the list. Okay, so now that I have that logic, we need to figure these steps out. So load the password file into the list. This is pretty complicated and requires a couple of steps of its own, right? So let's think that through. So loading password file into a list. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is open the file. For line in file, add line to list. Why does that work? If you go back and look at the passwords, there's one password per line. See that? All right. So I think that's the logic I need. So let's write this part first. So open file with open. Probably should do this in another cell, right? Let's do that. With open. And this is the name of the file, and you certainly don't want to watch me try to type this. That's always going to be a disaster. And we're going to open that for reading. And we need a file handle, so how about PWF or password file? For line in password file. Now I want to add line to a list, and the way you add line to the list is you use the append function, and you might be wondering, how do I know that? If I just go down here and do help list, right? It tells me all the list functions. And in here you'll see that there's append, add object to end, which is what I want. The problem is, of course, that I don't have a list yet, so I need to make an empty list. So let's call this password list as an empty list. So that's how you make an empty list. You can also make an empty list this way if you want. Either way works. I like to do it that way. And now we can say password list append line, like that. And then when we're down here, we should have a full password list. But I don't know how many there are. Let's do len password list and find out how many passwords are in this list. See if this works. There's 500 passwords in this list. So I certainly don't want to print out the whole list. That's too many. So I'm going to use slice notation to just go through and maybe print the first 10, right? So here we go. There we go. That'll print passwords 0 through 9. And there they are. There's those passwords. Now, what I don't like about what I see already is that there's this thing in the password. So if I type in the word password, if I type this in, it's not going to match it because what's stored in the list is password and then this, which is called the new line character. So I need to remove that from line before I append it. That's a string function. So if you type in help stir, get your help on strings, you'll see that there's a function here called strip. And it returns the string without the leading and trailing white spaces. So it gets rid of all the enter keys and the tab keys and the spaces and all that stuff. So I want to use strip. So I'm going to put that right here, line strip. So I'm calling the function on the string and then appending that to the list. If this is too much for you to digest in one statement, you can do this. You can do stripped line is line strip. Then we want to append the stripped line. Whatever floats your boat. It would help if I spelled it correctly. Line, stripped line here and stripped line there. There we go. There's our passwords in the list. Okay, now the rest of the code is going to sort of follow along as it would with me doing this stuff here, input and all that stuff. But before I do that, this is a unique segue into why we use functions, right? This code here accomplishes a task. It does the following. It loads the password file into a list. All the code you see here loads the password file into the list. It does that. So this is a great opportunity for me to make my code a little easier to read by refactoring it, taking this code and turning it into a function. Load password file into list. It doesn't need any inputs. The function doesn't need any inputs because it reads its data from the file. So I'm going to move all these under the function like that. And then right here, I'm going to return the password list. Why am I returning the password list? Because when this is done, when this function is done, it needs to send back the list of passwords so that the rest of the code that I write can use it. So now the first line in my code becomes this. I could call it password list. I could call it something else. It doesn't have to be the same name as this. It's just, I like this name, so I'm going to keep using it. And then I'm just going to call this function, and you don't want to watch me type it. It's going to be a disaster. Turn line numbers on. There. So now I'm calling the function. So the main program starts here. And the first thing it does is it invokes this, which runs this. And then the very last thing this does is sends this back here and then assigns it there. And it's easier to read because now step 1 in my program is load password file into list, which matches this semantically. So that's what I like about what I've done here. Okay, let's continue on and write the rest of our program. It should be pretty easy to do. Let's see. Candidate, password, input, enter, password, candidate. All right. If candidate password in password list. That's what's really cool about Python is if you want to see if what you typed here is in this list, you just use the in operator. You know, if I type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it'll say, is that in this list? Oh yeah, it's right there. True. If I type in 9, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it'll say, is that in the list? Oh, it's not. False, right? So it's very simple. And let's just do a little printing now. Print %s is not in the known password list. There we go. Else, and I'm just going to copy this because I'm getting lazy. Oh, if it is, it should be is in the known password list. Let's put an exclamation mark, and then let's say is not in the known password list. There. That looks a little better. Let's see if this works. So first step is going to load it all into the file, into memory, into the list. Then it's going to do the input, and then it's going to compare it to the list. Let's see if it works. Enter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Whoops. Candidate password is not defined. It would probably help if I could spell these things correctly, right? Candidate password, candidate password, candidate password, candidate password. Boy, it really would help if I knew how to spell, right? I can code, I just can't spell. All right. And then, of course, I forgot my %s's here. Sloppy. Yeah, how did I know that? It says %, and there's nothing after that, right? So, geez, I'm going to give it something, right? Let's fix this up there. That looks a little better. All right, let's try it again. Is in the known password list. And let's run it again. And we'll put in that is not in the known password list. So that could probably be a pretty good password. It's not in the known list of 500 passwords, I guess. All right. So that's mostly the program, really. That's it. Now, to turn this into a loop, right? Because where it would really be useful is you can try several passwords. Now that we have this password list into memory, we don't have to keep reloading it from the file like we did in that beer example that we did previously. So what we'd like to do is take advantage of that with a loop. So I'm going to create a loop using the infinite loop pattern with a break. So I'm going to say while true. I don't want to put this in the loop because I want to do this one time. Load the password list. I don't need to reload it every time. So that's why I'm starting my loop here, while true. I'm going to move all this over like that. And then whenever you're doing the infinite loop pattern, you're checking for what's called a sentinel. That is a specific value that tells the loop to stop. In this case, I'm going to say enter the password or type quit. How's that? That quit will be my sentinel. And you always check for the sentinel right after your input. So right after your input, I need to check for the sentinel. If candidate password, and I'm not going to type it because I apparently can't type it. If that equals quit, then I break the loop. It just continues on, business as usual. Let's see this work. So I want to emphasize one thing. In this program, this loads the passwords from the file. I don't want to put that in the loop because I don't want to keep reloading these from the file. There's 500 passwords in here, but if you're going to do this for real, you might have a database with 4 million passwords in it. And the last thing you want to do is load 4 million passwords every time someone needs to check their password. That would just be insane. Okay. Enter your candidate password or type quit. Let's type Mike Mike is in the known password list. Okay, that's not good. Let's try QWERTY. QWERTY is in the known password list. But boy, all my passwords that I use for web banking are in use here. Let's try Monkey. Monkey is in the known password list. Oof, I need to get new passwords. Let's try Monkey77. Monkey77 is not in the known password list. All right, I guess I could use that password for something. And let's type quit. And then that stops the program. So that's it. We have 18 lines of code to pay dirt. The first 7 lines, they define a function that reads from a file a line at a time, then strips out the end of line character and appends that to a list of passwords and then returns the password list. Then the main program just asks for input, checks to see if you put in the sentinel to stop looping. If not, it checks your candidate password against the password list. Now, one way we can make this even better is, like you have Monkey and you have Monkey77, right? One way to make it even better is to look for any part of that password in that password list. So if I typed in Monkey77, it would say that's probably not a good password either. And that's a little more involved than what the original problem tried to solve, because you can't just say in the password list. What you'll have to do is loop through every single password in the password list and try to find the candidate password in there. So that's a little bit different and probably beyond the scope of what I asked you to do and what I set out to do. But if you want, I can give it a try. So what I'm going to do is, I got this code working. Let's try to make it even better. So what I'm going to do is I'll do the following. I'll say for password in password list, if candidate password, if we find the candidate password anywhere in that list. So if the position for the first password in the list, if I find what I typed as the candidate password, I think I need to reverse this. I'm not sure though. I'm going to try it this way first. Then I want to print it's in the known password list. And I want to break from this for loop. And then this else will occur only if I never break. This else goes with this for now, and it only happens when I don't break. So let's see how this works. Remember, one of my passwords was Monkey. So I want to make sure Monkey77 is not a good password. Let's try it out. Give it a shot. So enter candidate, Monkey. Monkey is in the known password list. So far, so good. Monkey77. Monkey77 is not in the known password list. Okay, that's not what I wanted. So I think I need to rethink this. So Monkey77 is the candidate password. I want to find the password in the candidate password. So I actually have these reversed. I want you to think about it this way. I'm looking for Monkey inside this. All right, this is candidate password. So I did have those reversed. I suspected I'd had those reversed. So I'm going to move that here. And over here, we're going to put password. I think that's more in line with what I want. Let's try that. Enter your candidate Monkey. Monkey77 is in the known password list. See, now it's smart. If you type in password, it says that's not a good password, right? It's in the known list. And if I type in 123 password 456, it still says it's in the known password list. So now we have an even stronger password checker. And I have to type in something completely ridiculous for it to not be in that list. Okay. And there it is. So that's probably a better solution to the problem. I know it's not what I originally asked, but I always like to think about these things as I go through and do it. Is there an even better way that I can do it? And I did find a way to do that. And this for loop is very simple. What I'm doing is I'm looking for, I'm going through each of the passwords in the list, and now I'm checking that password against what you inputted. And I'm seeing if any part of that password is in the candidate that you entered. And if that's the case, I'm going to call it a known password and break. And if you make it all the way through this loop and don't find any of those, of all those 500, then I'm going to jump down to this else and print out it's not in the known password list. Hey, thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Bye.